Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Hey everybody, welcome. It is Wednesday, December 15th, and look who's here! June, the fairy godmother herself, in person. Holy cow, I can't believe it. How are you, June?
I'm great. It's been a minute on a webinar.
It has been a minute, right? Geez, we've been doing these, I don't know, years and
like
years and
6 years. Yeah, long time.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, and most of you wouldn't, June was my co-host for a very long time in doing this. And then she I'm out of here, man. Let Megan do it. So Megan is traveling again today. So we wish her safe travels. Glad to have all of you online with us today. We've got June here because we've got a really special new announcement, and she's going to help me talk about it in a minute. But we're also going to take your questions, study questions, and some administrative questions. And then I'm going to deal with a couple of topics on my own, crazy person that I am. There was a question about double jeopardy and a question about title versus lien theory. I don't know. I'm going to try. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, crazy stuff. Are you ready for Christmas, June?
Almost. I need to wrap. That's what I need to do. I need to wrap.
That's different than I understood the assignment. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, we're glad to have you here with us. If you are online, we are glad to have you here live. If you're watching later on replay, good to be with you. While I've got you here, because you're not going to stay on screen the whole time today, apparently. You and I have been talking for a while about your group coaching, which for those of you that don't know, June has a weekly group coaching call on mindset. And I think it's probably our most popular group coaching call, has been with us through a number of cycles. And we have decided that we needed to be able to dive a little bit deeper and give people the opportunity for some personal coaching time with June. So look, why don't I turn it over to you, June? Tell them what we did.
So we created a one-to-one coaching program called Calming the Chaos. And what is calming the chaos? That's basically calming the inner voice. I think we all have an inner voice that a lot of times talks really negatively and really bottoms our study. It's not productive. It's not helpful. And you don't have to live like that. You don't have to study like that. There's a way out. And so Calming the Chaos is working one-on-one with me for 4 calls and learning how to tame that voice to a more positive friend, so to speak, to help you with your studies and also to help just lessen stress in life and be more productive when you do study. You don't have to study 10 hours if you put in 3 hours of really productive study time. So it's a big game changer.
Yeah, it really is a game changer. And we've been working and talking about this for a long time and finally cleared out enough space in June's schedule. She drives our administrative end of the business here as well as doing our group coaching. So we were able to finally, as we got the new course platform put together and all of those pieces, and that's been a huge task for the last, 6 months or so. It just felt like coming out of COVID, I think we're hopefully coming out of COVID, there's been so much chaos in the world, and it seems to have resided, it's gotten a hold of some people's brains. And I don't mean the COVID part, but just the craziness of the bar exam, the craziness of the world. And it makes it hard for people to focus and concentrate because there's so much noise in their head. Is that an accurate description?
That is so correct. And there's so much distraction right now. Every few minutes, it seems like it changes. And it's chaotic. And that builds in our brain and in our bodies. And it creates stress that we don't have to have. So part of what we're going to do on this one-to-one coaching is helping to decipher like what to keep and what to just throw away. Because everything we hear or that comes at us, we don't have to hold on to that. We can release it and just keep what's good for us. keep what's helpful. And the other thing that I think this program really does is so many of us and so many of our students are carrying baggage from prior exams. And you know what? It's time to drop the luggage. The bar exam is a mountain climb. You don't need to be carrying 6 suitcases while trying to climb the mountain. And I can help you get rid of the suitcases.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you that don't know, June is a certified mindset coach. She has done this work for years. She has been my personal mindset coach for more than 5 years, I think. And I can attest to the fact that it makes a difference. And so we wanted to give that opportunity to use. June and I did a video. We talked about what this Calming the Chaos is about. It's 4 30-minute video calls spread out over a period of time. As soon as you order, you will be taken right to a special Calendly link to schedule your first call with June. She's going to record those calls for your use, and no one else will see them, so it's private, but it's a chance for you to go back and review what you've done, and I think that's valuable.
I do. We talked about this earlier. I think what you need a guideline. It's very hard to see how far we've come if we don't have anything to gauge it against. So these calls and some other things we're going to do in the coaching program it's going to give you a gauge to see like where you were a month ago to where you are now. Megan and I agree so much on this. Who you are today is not who you will be tomorrow. Yeah. And who you are when you sit for the exam is not the same person. So it's good to see how you have grown so that you can keep on that forward momentum.
Yeah. And we're already getting comments in the chat box from people that are excited about this possibility. I want to encourage you to go ahead and jump in. We've priced it, I think, pretty affordably. But like all things, June has limited time availability, like Megan and Brianna. And so if you want to do this, a couple of things. One, I think you want to get in while she's got space. Secondly, if you're a February bar taker, there's plenty of time to do this if you're a February bar taker.
Yes, there is. One thing that when Jackson and I were creating this is I want to make sure that if you're a February bar taker, we get all of your calls in and that you have time to use this with your studies. I will work with you. Everybody on this call by now should have my email address, june@celebrationbarreview.com. And if for some reason you get the calendar link and it's not working for you, like a time, email me. We'll work it out. Okay. I can be very flexible with this. I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. And that's what these 4 calls are about, is supporting you to be your best you. And Jackson, when we did our interview, I forgot something I wanted to talk about super quick, if that's okay. So one reason why I wanted to do these calls is a few cycles back, we had an alumni, a former student, who actually passed with us his second time. But during our group coaching calls, he was upset because he felt he didn't pass the exam because he was sitting too close to the restroom. So there was a lot of movement. He was distracted. That's understandable. So on our group coaching calls, I made it my mission that by the time we were done, he could sit in the bathroom and pass the bar. And he took that exam and passed that exam. Yes, we're going to teach you to create your bar exam bubble where nothing gets through that and you're able to do what you need to do.
Yeah. And I sent an email out to everybody in which I talked about this idea of mitote, which is the chaos and the upset and the upheaval, and calming that. And once you have calmed that in your brain, if you're a photo reader, you're going to hear the non-conscious more effectively. You're going to be able to implement selective intuition more effectively. You'll write better. Everything happens better when you calm the brain. And I think this goes so well with the paraliminals. It goes well with the meditation, all of the pieces that we talk about. We know that the odds are stacked against you as a repeat bar taker. We want to give you every tool we can to be successful. So I hope you'll take advantage of this. June, it's great to have you with us. I know you're going to jump off to handle the chat box and all the other stuff that goes on. But what a treat, and I hope everybody, so there she is, live and in person.
Just remember, everybody, this is a beautiful gift to give yourself. You are worthy of this. You deserve it. And not only will it help you with your bar exam, but it will filter to every part of your life. And so you owe it to yourself to give yourself a wonderful gift. And with that, I'm out.
Peace out. Thanks, June. Good to see you. Thank you for being with us. All right. I hope you'll take advantage of that again. And June will put the link up in the chat box as well so that you have the opportunity to register and get going with that. Let me get to some questions that came in during the week. And I do see people signing up already for June's Calming the Chaos workshops. That's exciting. Make sure you do that. All right, let me get to some questions that came up, and then we'll get to the substantive legal discussion. First one was a student wrote and said, I wanted to reach out to find out where the video on highly tested subjects and topics would be in the course. I remember seeing it before, but now I can't locate it. I think what this student was referring to is the preview video that I do before each exam in each jurisdiction. You will find the preview videos I did before the July exams in 2021. Isn't that crazy? But what's happening is I will record new videos prior to the February 2022 exams. Now, typically, I don't release those videos until the very first part of February. And the reason for that is I don't want you focused on I don't even want to use the word prediction. I hate that word. My preview. I don't want you to overcompensate based on what I'm saying. It's the curse of being relatively accurate, but I'm certainly fallible and I could make a mistake and I might see something and the examiners don't want to go that direction. And so I don't want you to overreact to that. So as a result, you'll see that in February. But if you want to see what I said before the July exam, you're welcome to go back and look at that. It's an optional assignment. So I think that's what that student was looking for, and that's where you would find it. It's in the early part of the course. All right, next question I got had to do, when someone's not been successful on the exam, I record a video going through their scores if they've sent me their score sheet. And so a student wrote back to me after getting the score sheet and said, I appreciate the time that you took to send the video regarding the last failed exam. And this student said, I agree that the essays and MPT portions were what's causing me to fail in their particular case. And I thought this was interesting. The reason I wanted to use the question is what they said next. They said, the first UBE exam I took, I never reviewed a single essay, but I got a 126 score. That's not a great idea to not review the essays, obviously. So the student says, the next exam I studied and I practiced 50 plus essays, and I changed my writing style back to IRAC in hopes it would return a better score. Not to my surprise, but I think to this student's surprise, their score went down. Why? Because IRAC doesn't work very well. And this is what we've seen over decades. It's what the study that was done a couple of years ago, and we talked about it in the 6 keys to the passing list, discovered as well. It just isn't a very effective style. So then the student says, since then, I've changed my style four times to try and get back up to where I was, but the score hasn't risen back up to that level. And therefore, I want to utilize your coaching. Yeah, I'm glad this student is making that decision. The point I really wanted to make here is a lot of people, and the theme that runs throughout a lot of the questions I got this week is a rising sense of panic, right? Of the chaos. The thing that part of the reason we wanted to do the Calming the Chaos is that there's a lot of panic out there, understandably. And so people start trying to put together their own self-serve cocktail, if you will, of study methods. They jump around from one idea to another, and they go one way to the other. And they don't really take advantage of all the tools that we can offer. Now, I'm really pleased that so many students have upgraded their courses to coaching with me or coaching with Megan. It does make a difference, and it makes a substantial difference for people. And so this student said, I agree that I can pass the test, but I need the coaching to do it. And then they said, where do I find the place to order that? They found it, but for those of you that don't know, if you want to upgrade your course, whether you're a first time in the course or you're retaking the course and now you want to add coaching, in the very first section under course walkthrough, near the bottom of that unit, there is a lesson that says if you're retaking Celebration Bar Review course, and you'll see all of the upgrade links there. And you can also find those same links in the section about adding personal coaching to your course. And all you got to do is go to that page, click on that link, place the order, and you're set to go. It's literally that simple. Megan did ask me to convey to you that she still has some availability, although it's narrowing. There's not a lot left with her for the February exam. So if you want to work with Megan, you probably need to make that decision in the next week, maybe I would say right after Christmas. She's probably going to shut down February coaching. I still have capacity. I'm not as pretty as she is. Somebody said they wanted to work with her because she's prettier. I can't disagree. But in any event, I still have capacity and I'll be able to take students all the way through in February. But she's got a little less capacity. She's also got 2 young children. If you want to work with Megan, great, but you need to get on that and go ahead and do that. If you need the link, it's inside your course platform, and that's really the best way to find it, but you can always contact June and she can get you there as well. All right, then we got some terrific questions about study strategies, and some of them are a bit lengthier, but I do want to go through them because I think they apply to so many people. Let's go ahead and jump in. A student wrote, and I think this might have been in Facebook, that's where I think it comes from, but I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit. What they said is it's been 9 years since they were in law school. They have to take the UBE and they feel pretty rusty about test taking. I think that's a pretty common. The student says, I was doing other multiple choice questions before starting this course, and now I'm trying the method that you teach, Jackson, of selective intuition for the first time. And the student says, and I think this is true for a lot of people, I don't know what method I was using before I started the course. It was probably some combination of trying to figure out the question and a process of elimination. I was getting about 60 to 80% of the questions right when I was doing those questions. Then the student says, I took the first 25 questions in the Celebration Bar Review courses in criminal law and procedure, and I got the worst percentage I've ever gotten in the question sets, about half of the questions. And so let me stop there before I get to their specific question. This is not unusual. We're asking you to switch what you've been doing because we know there's a ceiling to it, and there's really no ceiling in selective intuition. But like any new technique or style or methodology, there's typically, you don't go on a straight line up. What happens in the stages of learning is that you go from what's called unconscious incompetence, which is you don't even know that you don't know anything. And then you become consciously aware of your incompetence. So it's called conscious incompetence. And that's where this student happened to be after doing the first 25 questions. They suddenly became aware that they weren't getting all the questions right. In fact, they're only getting about 50%. But you don't stay in conscious incompetence. The next step is you go to conscious competence, which is when you become aware of what you're doing, you improve your skill set, and your numbers start to go up. That's why we ask you to do those benchmarks throughout the course. And you'll have that kept as a record. I made a video, in fact, about how to see your worksheets in the course. But in any event, conscious competence is what it takes to pass the exam. But the final stage of learning is called unconscious competence, which is when you're just in the zone, you're just doing it, and you're not even thinking about it. And that's where we want you to be, but you don't have to get there to pass the exam. So in any event, this student is at the lowest point. They're at consciously incompetent, and it's very uncomfortable, and I appreciate how difficult that is. But then I love what they had to say. I didn't give up on the method because I think it's probably the best way to do the test and not to have fatigue after 200 questions. No kidding. When you finish in an hour and a half, that first morning session, you're going to love the fact that you get an extra half hour. Then they went to their questions in the Facebook group and they said, did anybody find their selective intuition wasn't as good in the beginning because they didn't know enough substantive law, or that the substantive law wasn't just prevalent enough in the unconscious brain? And I think that's a really insightful way to ask the question. We begin with the presumption that you have what's called natural genius. Your genius mind has all of the information that you need already. I'm glad that we're teaching you the law, but the truth is, after going to law school, after practicing law, after taking the bar exam, most of you have more than enough information. And the analogy that I use, and I want to share with you, is that for most of you, it's like having an electric engine and a gasoline-powered engine in the same car. The electric engine is your short-term memory, it's your conscious mind, and the gasoline engine is the full tank of gas. When you're trying to memorize and eliminate, you're working from the conscious brain, and that has limited capacity. The charge runs out. And for most people, it runs out before you get to the passing score. But this non-conscious brain has got a virtually unlimited capacity. And all you have to do is flip the switch from the conscious to the non-conscious, and you'll start to feel the power surging through you, literally, and the ability to get the scores correct. And I'm going to encourage this student, but all of you really, to stay with this idea of working with selective intuition. The more you do it, the more that you calm the chaos in your brain, the more that you listen to that non-conscious voice, that you mind map and you look at the material and you react to the questions, the better you will be. And you will see that over and over again. And we've had now literally decades of working with people to see that it works that way. So to that student, thanks for having the insight and the self-awareness and the willingness to keep trying. I promise you it gets better. It's just the reality and something that people go through. And we're going to talk about this with photo readers as well, because it's very much the same process. It's just, you kind of gotta, it feels like you're grinding at first, and then you get into the flow and it goes so much better. Great question. Thank you for that. I see a question in the chat box. A student says, I'm trying the muscle testing for multiple choice. It's consistently wrong. I think what the student is talking about with muscle testing is this test in which you take your thumb and one of your fingers, and you hold them together, and then you try, is A correct? And you bring your thumb, is B correct? Is C correct? Is D correct? For most people, muscle memory works pretty well. If you find it's consistently wrong, then stop doing it. Just stop and go back to just basic selective intuition. Just trust your gut and answer the question, and then go and review it and see if you got it right. I think what happens to a lot of people is that they get so tight on the technique and so focused on the technique that they're not really listening to what their gut is telling them, and by gut, the non-conscious brain, about the result that they're getting. For a lot of people, that muscle memory works just fine, but if it's not working for you, don't bother with it. I find that when people are more relaxed, they get a better result and they get a better, more accurate read. So that's part of what goes on there. Next question we got, we had a student that took the UBE in Alabama, and I wanted to highlight this because Alabama is a very unusual state in the way that they do their scoring. If you reach a threshold, and I believe the number is 140, I might be wrong about that, but if you get a 140 or higher on either part of the exam, either the written part or the MBE, Alabama lets you bank that score and you don't have to take that part of the exam again. Now, this is similar to what's done in Florida with the 136. If you get a 136 or greater, you get to bank that part of the exam. But in the UBE, you don't see that very often. So we had a student that worked with Megan on her essays, and she got a 140 on the essays, which is awesome. That's a fabulous number. Now, Alabama requires a 260 overall to pass. So the question is, what happens when you get that 140? What score do you need on the other part of the exam next time? And I wasn't sure. And so I said to the student, go back to the examiners, because I honestly, this is so weird. I don't know what they're going to come up with. And what they said was that the student only needed a total of 260. So they only need a 120, in this case on the MBE. I like that, because I got to tell you, there's no place in the country where a 120 on the MBE would be enough to pass the bar exam. That's dramatic. It's 10 points less than you'd need anywhere else in this particular situation. So this is awesome to me. If you're thinking about the UBE, I would look at Alabama right now. I'm just all over Alabama. We've always had good success in that jurisdiction. I think it's a good group of bar examiners, fairly easy to work with, small exam. But I love the fact that you can split this up and bifurcate it. And I'm not aware of any other UBE jurisdiction that does this. As I say, you can do it in Florida, but pretty cool. And so good stuff there. And I love the idea of having just a minimal score that you need on the other part of the exam when you've split it up that way. Very good. Gregory asked, what if you registered for the UBE in another jurisdiction? Does it matter? Yes, it does matter. In the case of the Alabama, you've got to transfer your score to Alabama. This is the Alabama rule only applies if you took the UBE in Alabama. So in other words, I don't think you can make that transfer, but it's a brave new world out there. So if you got better than a 140 on one part of the exam last July, I would contact the Alabama examiners and see what the rules are there. I can't tell you specifically because they make up their own rules. So it's a great question. I think generally you would have to sit in Alabama, but as I say it, I don't know. maybe you could do it. So contact Alabama and see what they say. Next question. Last week, we talked about the spousal marital privilege, and a student wrote afterwards and said, I got more confused after the call because the conversation seemed to blend spousal privilege and marital communication for me. And the student said, I thought that if there was a marital communication, any private communication during the marriage, then the right to exclude that communication could be asserted by any spouse. That's true, but what we were talking about was the criminal exception. And that's why we were talking about it, because the criminal application of spousal privilege is different. And if you go back, I actually made that distinction at the beginning of the discussion. To reiterate, in a criminal case, it is not the criminal defendant spouse that has the privilege, it's the testifying spouse. And the reason is that we don't want people to commit crimes and then be able to keep the witness spouse from testifying. So it's only if the witness spouse chooses to exert the privilege. In that case, it is assertable by the witness spouse. In a criminal case. In a civil case, different rules. Then it is anybody, either spouse can keep the confidence out. So go back and check out that discussion. It is not only in the podcast, but we took those answers and we put them into the course platform. So my discussion of the rule against perpetuities, which was mine, I realized, is in the property modules in your course as a separate optional 10-minute blip. And then the spousal privilege is in evidence, and you can check it out there as a little 10-minute video. And that's what we'll continue to try and do those and add them to your courses so you can watch them there. All right, great question. No, thank you for the follow-up. And I have to say, it is very challenging and a little scary to do these questions on the fly live. All right, a couple more study strategy questions I want to get to. Next one from a student who said, I don't understand photo reading, and I'm worried that I'm delaying myself trying to figure it out. It's frustrating. It costs so much. I'm feeling anxious about my bar prep. There's a lot of things going on in those simple 4 sentences. First of all, take a breath and relax. There's nothing to understand about photo reading, and I think this is one of the keys to it. You are photo reading naturally anytime you look at a page. All we're doing is getting you to flip pages. If I can get you to flip pages and relax, you're going to be okay. But I will echo what Paul Sheely says in that course, which is it is not satisfying to the conscious brain. In other words, it doesn't feel like anything's happening consciously. So I'm going to go back to my example of the car with an electric brake, an electric motor, and a gasoline motor. If I filled up the gasoline engine and I go to the electric engine, it's not going to be anything. Nothing's changed there. It's unsatisfying to the electric engine. I have to be in the gasoline engine to get the advantage of it. And so what happens is that people expect something consciously. I think because it's called photo reading, they tend to think it's going to be, you're going to have a photographic memory. I wish they would have come up with a different name for it, but there we are. Nonetheless, it's all there. You're getting it all in the non-conscious, and we're simply repeating and building and layering on top. So when we go back to my idea of natural brilliance, you've already got this core material, and now we're just adding to it every time you photo read. In terms of the time it takes you to learn how to photo read, if you went through all 8 of the lessons that Paul does, it's 8 hours, so an hour a day for 8 days while you're studying for the bar. So there's no reason to hesitate or slow down. You do it while you're studying for the bar. And truthfully, I think most people will tell you that after about 4 lessons, maybe 5, from Paul, they're ready to incorporate it into their bar studies. And you see the assignment for a photo reader at the bottom of each one of your lessons. You're not delaying. So my point is, you're not delaying yourself by trying to figure it out. Don't try to figure it out. Just do it. Just photo read it, follow the instructions, mind map, and you're going to be fine. You really are. And then the student said, I'm feeling anxious about my bar prep. Yeah, people feel anxious at this point. When we get around the holidays, there's just something for February bar takers that just when you combine the holidays and bar prep, it's always anxious. This year with COVID and the world situation generally, I think there's more stress. Last year, there was an incredible amount of stress. And I think it causes this great feeling of anxiety, which is why, again, the theme today is calming the chaos. It's why we felt it was so important to offer this coaching with June to help people who are feeling that anxiousness to just relax, to let it out, to breathe it out, to be able to start to focus. So photo reading will work for you. Don't give up on it. If you're frustrated, you can schedule a call with me. I am glad to coach you through PhotoReading. Literally, we can do it in under half an hour. So hang in there with PhotoReading. All right, next question. This came from a student who said the board, after 3 months of waiting in Florida, approved the ticket of admission. But since I hadn't received a formal response and because I had lots of work to do at work, I haven't been able to study up to this point and follow the course. Now I have to make a decision to fully commit for February. What are your thoughts? My thoughts are it's absolutely doable, but let's talk realistically. If you're just starting our course for Florida or Georgia or the UBE or California here in middle of December, you've got about 250 to 300 hours of study ahead of you. So you can do the math and you're going to figure out that works out to about 30 hours a week. So that's if you haven't done anything up until this moment, you've got to be at about 30 hours a week. And you do that by going to your calendar and you schedule blocks of time for bar study. And you get in blocks of an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. And I would not schedule more than 3 hours at a time. And you're just in that block of time and you set up your 30 hours and then you just start working through the 30 hours that way, following the course assignments. Now, if you're not ready, you can defer. I mean, it costs nothing to defer with us. There might be some charge with the bar examiners, but there's no reason to not get started. And if you were in a traditional big box bar review, you're just starting this week anyway, and they're expecting you to do 500 or 600 hours. So you've got a much easier path to follow. Now, what if you've been studying for a while? Do you need to do 30 hours a week? No, absolutely not. 20 hours a week for most of you is enough. If you've been studying up to this point, 20 hours a week should be fine to get you there for the February exam. And if you've got a question about that, jump onto a group coaching call. That's a great place to get that kind of calibration. Or if you're coaching in coaching calls with me or with Megan, we will definitely discuss with you your pace. Maybe you're going too fast, maybe a little bit too slow. But the point I want to make is you've got plenty of time to get there and finish up. So just wanted to get that out there. Don't panic. But if you can't put in 30 hours and you're just starting out right now, what should you do? Start study, do what you can. Let's see where you're at. And when we get to early February, you can make a decision. And if you have to defer, yeah. Okay. Next question I got. Again, the theme of random panic setting in. The student said, I have previously bought another company's note cards. And I've heard you say over and over, we shouldn't use note cards. We shouldn't be making flashcards, and to trust the process. And then the student says, can I use those as reference or additional study material? You can, but again, it's the fear of missing out. It's if one tool is good, 10 tools are 10 times better, and they're not. And empirically, we know they're not. And not just us, but the studies that have been done for the New York bar found out the same thing. Doing flashcards, here's why flashcards don't work. Flashcards are all about memorization. They're charging your electric engine again. And you got to hold it in that electric charge and hope that it holds out long enough. But for most people, it's not enough. And it's incredibly time consuming to do them. And so what happens is we've got 300 hours of study, and then you add your flashcards, and you've just added 100 hours or more to your study with very little uptick. Maybe you get a small upgrade, but not a lot, because really what you're doing at that point is now the flashcards are designed to help you memorize a rule. But remember, our entire approach is not about memorizing the rules. Nobody cares. If you were in Georgia the last couple of exams, they said it's open book, go for it. We don't care. There's no value to memorizing a rule. And when I talk to new students and people that are considering the course, and I say, when's the last time in practice you saw someone memorize the law? The answer is invariably not at all, never. And so I think it's important to recognize that tools like these are valuable if you're in a big box bar review that wants you to memorize and recite rules, but they have no value to us in our course. Could we create flashcards? Sure. We've had 30 years to figure it out. I think we could do it. We just don't think it's a valuable use of your time. So what should you do instead? I would take that time for this student that you were doing with flashcards, and I would make mind maps. I think mind maps is a huge advantage. We have the product for BarMaps, which is pre-made mind maps plus interactive videos plus fast finish audios of the lectures. And I think that would be a far more valuable use of your time and resources, because then you've got the mind map core that you can take and start to work with that and build that out. And that's a better way to learn at a deeper level. So a mind map is putting gasoline in the gas tank, and a flash card is trying to give a short-term charge to your electric engine brain. I hope that makes sense. And again, that random sense of panic setting in, natural, but you don't have to give into it. Check out the coaching with June for sure. Next question. I watched the Wednesday videos in which you and Megan went over the statistics of retakers during the time that exam results were being released. And for those of you who don't know, it was 20% nationally. It was 1 out of 5. The student says, this is my 6th time taking the test. The retaker pass percentage is low. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going through the study guide. I'm photo reading. I'm doing coaching calls with Megan. I'm attending group coaching calls. But I wonder if there's something else that I should be doing. I don't know why all of a sudden I become so nervous and anxious, but I worry that I'm not doing enough. And this is really the epitome of what I just see over and over again from people, this sense of I'm not doing enough. And I just want to tell you that it is enough. What you're doing, this course works. What you're doing works. Photo reading works. The Paraliminals work. The coaching works. Now with adding the opportunity to do the coaching with June is a huge opportunity, I think. The time coaching with Brianna, another great opportunity. I don't know that you have to do more, but I think you have to focus on where you are feeling the most deficient and focus there. If you are struggling with this mitote, this chaos or uproar in your brain, take the time to do the coaching with me, with June. If you are struggling with how to write and just how to get the FLA system, do the personal writing workshop with Megan. If you can't figure out how to schedule your day, do the session with Brianna. If you need help on your writing, jump into the coaching with me or with Megan. Those are all tools for you to help you be successful. But what we know works is to photo read, to mind map, to go through the course as you see it, to use selective intuition. When you're doing those things, that's how you beat those odds. Now, are those daunting numbers, 1 out of 5? Yeah, very much. But you don't have to give into that. Every exam, we have people that beat those odds in every jurisdiction, and they beat them by a wide range. It's pretty remarkable. I know it feels like, I'm missing out, I should do more, but really try hard not to go that direction. All right, we've got a few minutes left. I think what I'm going to do is take one of the questions that we got this week, and I wanted to just say, we're going to keep doing this, and so I'm going to invite you to send us your questions. But one of the things I noticed when I asked for the bar questions that kept you awake at night is that a lot of you gave me these very broad concepts. And I think part of the reason they keep you awake at night is that you're talking about a broad concept instead of getting to something that's more finite and more in the form of a specific question. So I'm going to ask you, when you've got a concept, attach to it an MBE question, an essay, something that illustrates the problem that you're having. And I thought maybe we could do this. I had a couple of subjects planned for today, but because of time, I think I'm just going to take one of them, had to do with title theory and lien theory, because what the student did is they actually gave me a bar question, which I thought really helped explain why they were having a problem. So what I'm going to do is jump over here. So we've been talking about the study questions that keep you awake, and there have been a lot of good ones, lien theory versus title theory. And here's what the student wrote. And they said, I always get confused in answering this question. I'm going to show you the question in a minute. And they said it's confusing to me because of the difference of the adherence to the lien theory versus the title theory of mortgages. So we're back in property, my favorite. And they said, please help me understand that concept. And I thought, well, that shouldn't be all that hard. And then I spent a better part of a day trying to whittle it down and make sense out of it. And I understood why the student got frustrated. And so I want to share this question with you and show you what happened. So here's the question, and it's a deceptively simple question, and it comes out of our materials. It's a license question. And what this question said is that Abel, who is the owner in fee simple absolute, deeded to Baker and Charlie as joint tenants. Okay, makes sense. Then Baker, in order to secure a promissory note to Max, executed a mortgage to Max of the entire fee in Blackacre. And then the call of the question just says the state of the title after the mortgage is. All right, now take a minute and just look at that question. And one of the first things that should jump out to you is that we have Baker and Charlie, they're joint tenants. And what's going to happen? And the question really is just asking what happens if one of those joint tenants executes a mortgage on the entirety of the black acre instead of just their portion? And that's the question that we're going to be dealing with here. All right. Now, I want to give you the rule of lien theory versus title theory, because you may not at this point have even been thinking as you're reading that question of lien theory state versus a title theory state. But there are two ways in which different jurisdictions handle this problem of a joint tenant mortgaging the entire property. So if you're in something called a title theory state, when you've got a mortgage, a bank or a mortgage lender, whoever it might be, what they say is that bank or mortgage lender holds the title of the property until it's paid in full. So they've got the title. And then the result of that is that the mortgage is treated as a conveyance, and the conveyance converts a co-tenancy, which is what we had with Baker and Charlie. They now become tenants in common, and the mortgage becomes a conveyance. So just like I've conveyed the property to a third party, when I set up a mortgage in a title theory state, I've now conveyed the property. So that's the first part of the rule. The second part of the rule says if there's a lien theory state, so a different jurisdiction that's a lien theory state, the bank or the mortgage lender never retains title of the property. So it's just the opposite. In a title theory state, you hold the title of the property until it's paid off. In a lien theory state, you don't get title of the property as a mortgage lender. So what does that mean? It means the mortgage is not a conveyance, and a severance of the estate doesn't occur unless they have to foreclose the mortgage. So as long as you're paying on your mortgage, you're never severing the estate, and there's no conveyance that's been made. Now, this rule becomes really important because, as you're going to see, the bar examiners now take a simple rule and they create a series of answer choices that, if you're feeling good right now, I'm going to make you feel bad. So here we go. I want to show you what the answer choices are to this question. Here's answer choice A. A joint tenancy, so we're asking what's the estate? It's going to be a joint tenancy with right of survivorship in B and C, subject to a mortgage on the interest of Baker in a state that adheres to the title theory of mortgages. Oh, crap. We're in the title theory of mortgages. So what does that mean? A joint tenancy in a title theory of mortgages. Okay, keep that in mind. Let's look at B. It's a tenancy in common between B and C with a mortgage on Baker's undivided half interest in a state that adheres to the lien theory of mortgages. You see how it starts to be a problem? We had this simple rule, you're all feeling good. Now the examiners start asking about these different hypotheticals in a title theory state or a lien theory state. It gets worse. C says a joint tenancy with a right of survivorship in B and C, subject to a mortgage on B's interest in a state that adheres to the lien theory of mortgages. So joint tenancy, right of survivorship, subject to the mortgage if you're in a lien theory state. And then finally, D, a joint tenancy with a right of survivorship in B and C, subject to a mortgage on B's interest if B survives C and inherits the entire fee in a state that adheres to the title theory of mortgages. So as Megan and I were talking about it beforehand, she said, really, you've got four hypotheticals here. You had a very simple fact pattern, but you've got four different questions in these answer choices. So A, B, C, and D, take a look at them. Now, I would like you, having just seen the rule, whether you studied property or not, and seeing these answer choices, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and type in A, B, C, or D if you're in the chat box. And I know some of you are going to be like, dude, I am not talking about what I think it should be. But go ahead and type it in, A, B, C, or D, because I want you to get a gut sense of this. You've seen the rule. We now have a couple of answer choices that talk about the lien theory states and a couple that say the title theory. And I get some answers in here. Okay, good. I'm getting a wide range of choices. This is why this is a tough question for sure. All right, good. Keep going. So let's see what we've got when we look at this. I want to go back to the rule now. You've seen the answer choices. Here's the rule. In a title theory, remember, the bank or mortgage lender holds the title. So it's a conveyance and it converts a co-tenancy into tenants in common. Did we have that? So let's go back again. In the title theory state, it's a conveyance and you've got tenants in common. So let's look at a title theory state. That would be answer choices A and answer choice D. Does that describe what happens? A says that there's a joint tenancy in a title theory state, and D says a joint tenancy in a title theory state. What does our rule tell us? Well, there's a conveyance and it creates a co-tenancy into tenants in common. I think what that's going to mean then is that A and D cannot be correct. Okay, so if you answered A or D, you're wrong, because what happens is that the conveyance by either party severs their joint tenancy and creates a tenancy in common in a title theory state. Remember, that means there's been a conveyance and that goes to a tenancy in common. All right, now let's go back to our rule. If we had a lien theory state, which would give us, if that was A and D that was wrong, yeah, so B and C now we've narrowed it down to. Remember, the mortgage doesn't constitute a conveyance and there's no co-tenancy until there's a foreclosure. So again, looking at B and C, B says you've got a tenancy in common in a lien theory state, and C says you have a joint tenancy in a lien theory state. Okay, what do we got here? In a lien theory state, a mortgage would not constitute a conveyance. Severance doesn't occur, and therefore C is correct and B is incorrect. All right, so let's go back. C is correct. A joint tenancy, right of survivorship, subject to a mortgage in a lien theory state. Why is B wrong? It's a lien theory state, but a tenancy in common isn't going to be correct because what we've got now is a joint tenancy the way that it was when the initial conveyance was made. Oh, my goodness, can you believe that? Is that crazy? Some of you got it. I see some of you that got C. That was good. But that's why that question is tough, right? The rule doesn't seem all that difficult, but when you start to work through it and you think about the rule and the lien theory and title theory, then you get to a result. Now, Amanda said that she did that by process of elimination and not by intuition. That's okay if you actually feel like you can eliminate out, but I would tell you that you can get to the same result intuitively a lot faster, taking that rule that you don't have to have memorized, but you intuit what the rule is, and you think about conveyances, and then you say, do we have a joint tenancy or a tenancy in common? And I think the deeper knowledge of the rule is what gives you the intuition to answer. Ethan says, is that considered a difficult question? Yes, statistically, that question has about a 25% accuracy rate from people that have taken it. It didn't make our top 10 list, probably could have, because that form of the question just makes it brutally difficult. If the question asked you what's a title theory state versus a lien theory state, that rule is pretty easy to grasp, I think. But when you start getting these multiple hypotheticals and the answer choices, that ramps up the degree of difficulty enormously. And so I would say if you can work through it in 90 seconds, that's fabulous. A lot of people would want to normally spend more time, but you don't want to do that. You want to pull from the deeper knowledge, and you just want to think about title theory versus lien theory and what the difference makes. So that's the answer to the question. I hope that helps. Maria is the one that submitted that. And so I don't know if Maria is on the call today or not, but I hope it helps you. Certainly a challenging question. So here's what we're going to do. In a couple of weeks, we'll be back and we'll pick up. I've still got double jeopardy. I keep trying to get there, but I will get there. And I'll take other questions. Megan and I will work on other questions that you gave, but I wanted to use this one because I thought what Marie did was so great. She had the general problem, but then she identified a question, and I think that makes it really good to be able to talk about it. So I encourage you all to give us those challenges that you've got, and we'll keep working through them. I think it's a valuable thing to help people understand the specific rule, but also the process that we want you to go through. All right. Thank you all for being with me today. This is going to be the last time that I am with you in the webinars before the holidays. So I do want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, a happy. Hope that all of you have safe holidays, that you continue to do your studying, but keep perspective. Studying and your family and the world all compete for your time. So make sure that you give everybody a little bit. We did that video about the holidays and the bar exam. Encourage you to watch that if you haven't. But we will be here. We will continue to be working. We just won't be doing our webinars and podcasts for a couple of weeks. But we will be back with you in January. So we wish you all the very best. We'll see you in 2022 when we, believe it or not, we will be within the 60-day window for the exam. To all of you, and I will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.